built a career as a serial tech entrepreneur out in San Francisco. Though back in January I left to join this new project. Yeah, so I am currently now based out in North Carolina, though I split my time between North Carolina and DC. I do a lot of business development travel for things like this. But we are working on a project out in Reidsville, North Carolina. So for anybody who is familiar with the geography of North Carolina, Raleigh-Durham you've probably heard of, that's sort of the Research Triangle. So Reidsville is like just west of Durham. Right? So we're right on the outskirts of that sort of metro area until it basically starts becoming Greensboro. But a little background on the rest of the team. I already told you about myself. Corin Seglum, he recently moved to he was a Marine Corps pilot, left active duty to work on this project out in North Carolina. He does have a background in business though, despite being a jarhead. That's what you call Marines, right? It's not an insult. But Corin and I actually originally became good friends as a result of a snowboarding trip when we were both living out in California. He was down in San Diego, I was up in San Francisco. And we both became super excited and interested in blockchain, Web3. And so as I was getting ready to leave my old company, we were making angel investments in tech companies, and in particular in the blockchain. And so that's what sort of pulled us together. And then he introduced me to Evans Richards, who Michael just told you about. Evans is actually the main partner who spearheaded this development project out in Reidsville. You'll see a little bit later what we're doing in Reidsville. A lot of what we're focused on right now is actually e-commerce and e-commerce for toys, because that is a business that he founded actually back when he was 12 years old. A series of business. He built his own little e-commerce empire there. The work that we're doing related to Filecoin is now starting to work its way into the larger plan of what we're doing with the facility beyond just e-commerce. But let me tell you a little bit more about the facility. So, who here's heard of Lucky Strike? Right? Not the bowling alley. Cigarette. Okay. So Lucky Strike was an iconic, well, it still is, iconic American brand for cigarettes. Back in its heyday, I'd say its peak was probably during like World War II, post-war era. A lot of the American GIs smoked Lucky Strikes, and it was a brand as well known as Coca-Cola around the world back then. Try this. Oh. Oh, perfect. Thank you. All right. Awesome. Technology. This is the factory in which it was. This is the factory where they made all those cigarettes for the American GIs and everything, right? In fact, and this is the facility that we bought. It's 2/3 of the facility that we bought, because since then there was actually an entire third section that was built here. So just to give you a little bit of a perspective on it. Of course, those of you who are fans of Mad Men probably know that Don Draper came up with the slogan, "It's Toasted," which was the brand name there, except that's a total lie. It was not Don Draper, it was this gentleman over here, Charles Ashby Penn, who was the president of American Tobacco at the time. He ran that factory, and it was him in an office that's in our building right now where he came up with the idea for "It's Toasted" as the slogan for Lucky Strike. Also, did you know that 20,679 physicians say Luckies are released here?
There's an endorsement.
Well, if he says it's safe, then but Lucky Strike is not what it used to be. And in particular, around anybody who lives in North Carolina, I know Michael, you're out there, knows that a lot of the economy of the state in the early days was built on tobacco. Actually, arguably, a lot of the economy of the United States, particularly the South, was built on tobacco, because Virginia is just across the border. As you know, George Washington was a tobacco farmer along with a lot of the founding fathers. Though the 20th century happened, we realized that cigarettes aren't great for us, and tobacco, honestly, like a lot of industries in the United States, has suffered quite a bit. You know, we call it, it's the plight of deindustrialization. You know, anybody from the Midwest or from the South, you've seen a lot of these factory towns shut down, and as a result, the economies of those communities have collapsed. And nowhere is that more evident than in towns like Reidsville, Winston-Salem, a lot of the tobacco belt in North Carolina. But our plan is to sort of is to fix that, to revive the economies, to come up with create a success story for how we can sort of turn that around, right? And we want to start at a place like Lucky Strike, in Reidsville, a town that was built on the economy of, call it the 19th century, early 20th century, and one that's now built on modern economy, e-commerce and technology and Web3. So this is our mission, right? This is what the facility looks like today, right? After we acquired it, and it's still obviously Phil and Michael were out there when we did our ribbon cutting. As you can see, it needs some work, but for what it is, it's surprisingly in good condition. Here's some pictures of the town. Very 1940s post-war. They used to have a baseball team there called the Reidsville Luckies, named after the cigarettes, right? So they still have a lot of the art up from that. This is downtown Reidsville. This is a statue in the middle, a memorial in the middle for all the tobacco workers who used to work at the facility, sort of in memory of them, and just to give you an idea of how much of the story of Reidsville is baked into that. But you contrast that to where things are looking now. You've got a solar facility that's built on the factory, and we're trying to expand that out. And yeah, so our mission, we want to reverse the trend, bring prosperity back to Reidsville by transforming a historic facility, a historic American facility, to a modern, multi-use facility for technology, e-commerce, and local entrepreneurship. That's our campaign. So, what do we have to work with? Well, the cool thing is that because this used to be a heavy industrial facility, there is a tremendous amount of infrastructure that is just there for us to use. To start with, the place is huge. We have 1 million square feet across 27 buildings, all in excellent structural condition. The power. Because there's a heavy industrial facility, we have a dedicated transmission line from Duke Energy that goes to the place. As of right now, provides up to 30 megawatts of electricity. And we also have 2 dedicated substations that go off of that direct line. We've talked to the power company. We can actually upgrade that line to 100 megawatts, right? And if we can get the cooperation of the state, we could also run a redundant transmission line from Duke into the facility. Unfortunately, they would need like 3 to 5% lead time. And we'd have to work out the rights of way. That could be a little bit complicated. In the meantime, one of our plans is to use one of the lots around the facility to build a natural gas generator or little power plant that can be used for power plants. And in connectivity, because we're right outside the research triangle, there's a tremendous amount of fiber that goes in and out of that area. As it stands right now, there are already like 3 fiber providers who go to the facility, which is kind of crazy when you consider that like this was a tobacco factory. What did they need fiber for? Well, it turns out that the state had invested a good amount of money into trying to connect rural areas of the state. And so when we were talking with the former mayor, he said, like, yeah, we had worked to get AT&T and Spectrum and all these providers into here, but I'll be honest, there was actually nobody who could use, a 100 gig connection. But we put it there and figured someone would figure out how to use it. Well, now we're coming in, trying to figure out how to use it. But what really excites us is just, this facility was originally built in 1889, and it really is quite an honor and a privilege to be able to come into this place. This place it has a proud history of over 130 years of operation. It didn't shut down until 2020. And to just be able to come in and rebuild it has been awesome. So here's a map of, just to give you a sense of the scope here. This is a map of the entire facility. I think for everything in red is what we own, right? And so this is in total, I think, 25 acres, right? You have the parking lot here, some open lots here that we could develop in, another open lot up there that's just concrete we could develop on. This is that picture I showed you of Lucky Strike, the drawing at the beginning, only covers like this section. This whole section here was new, built in the 70s, right? That's where you have a solar farm on there. And we haven't even been able to touch this yet because there's still tobacco equipment in there that's being packed up and shipped out. Phil, I know you had Stu, I know you had a chance to check it out. So, we have been able to occupy the middle sections here, I've had the distinct privilege of being the IT guy as we try to build what's effectively a startup in this factory. So I've had the distinct honor of installing 80 access points, getting up on ladders, pulling out the drill, and running Ethernet or fiber and Ethernet to connect these areas. By the way, just to give you a sense of scale, I've never had to set up a large Wi-Fi network like this, but we ordered like 50, and we used them really quickly. It's like, okay, we need another 50. Okay, we need another 50. Right. By the time we're done, this is going to be like 1,000 access points, probably a little bit. But anyway, it's large. It's large. This is a cool photo of the solar farm at the facility. You can look inside. There used to be a fully functioning power plant in here, coal power plant. Obviously, it's been shut down, but a lot of the infrastructure is still there. These are the power breakers or the transformers for just the middle section of that facility. And then this thing's been fun. It's a massive boiler that used to be used for all the heating in the building, as well as running a lot of the tobacco equipment that was in there. So we finally had to turn it on because the winter came, but it's running at like less than 3% capacity, which has been its own challenge because it's not designed to run that low. And so, wow, yeah, it's a hefty project we have here. So, what do we plan to do with it? Well, there are sort of three categories of things that we're focused on. One, actually the immediate thing that we're doing, actually has nothing to do with data centers or Filecoin. It's actually e-commerce logistics. The reason we bought the facility to begin with is because it was a lot of space, and for Evans's company, Revend, they are a massive reseller and distributor of Legos and Marvel and Star Wars, like collectible toys, in particular Legos. Right? I'll show you some pictures later, but if you're into Star Wars, Marvel, and like Funko Pops and all those collectible toys like Legos, we have probably one of the largest collections of it in the world. So the first category of things we're using it for is e-commerce and logistics, and then we are now doing the diligence on being able to turn it into a data center and tech facility. And then the third category of items is there are a lot of community projects that we can run out of the facility. That I'll go into a little bit later, as part of our larger mission of trying to revive, be a positive contributor to the economy of the area. So, any key things I want to have? Yeah. So, to start, we have like 450,000 square feet of usable Grade A warehousing space, which can be used for that, used for e-commerce. We're at a very interesting part of the state where they're now starting to build a new interstate through, right? interstate coming right by the town, so that's going to be great for the, I guess, the local infrastructure for getting equipment in and out. And also FedEx, and FedEx is establishing a new hub out at the airport. So there's going to be a lot of economic opportunity in the area over the next decade, I'd say. And then, of course, the part that everybody here is a little more interested in probably is the data center aspect of things. That number's a little out of date. That's at 60 megawatts. We are starting to build up a small data center in the facility. Right? We've partnered with Picnic to start to build up an SP. In full candor, none of the Picnic equipment is located in the facility yet, but the longer term is to get it in there at some point as we expand things out. But on the side, what we've been doing on our end is preparing the facility itself to be able to function as a fully functioning data center. And so more of my job, outside of getting the basic infrastructure set up in the facility, is actually to focus on partnerships and trying to and working with the data center consultants and engineers who've been going into the facility, planning everything out. And I'll go into more detail about what some of the plans are there. And then the last category of things that we're doing, which I actually get really excited about, because I feel like there's actually a lot of low-hanging fruit here. This is the stuff that the city, the county, or the city, the state, and our federal congresswoman have gotten really excited about, because these are all these things that we can do at the facility that will help those people get reelected, but also are opportunities for us to to create more economic opportunity in the area. To start with, I already showed you the solar farm that we had on the facility. This looks pretty large, but to put it in perspective, if you look at the map of it, it's like a tiny section over there. Right? The entire area is grade A space for putting solar facilities up. So we're actually eyeing this area to build a massive solar array and electric vehicle charging station, which our congresswoman is helping us get funding for. To finance that. And then actually working with Filecoin Green, we've been working with them on a project on building 16 to put an expansion array out there. Right? So that's solar energy. Electric vehicle charging station, I mentioned that a little earlier. There's a new interstate coming through, and there are no EV charging stations within an hour of where we are. And so our site is being looked at as a possible area to install that, especially since we can put a lot of solar out there, which is great. Because the other cool thing is that if with grants and with investment, we can get the government to cover most of it. And it also becomes a revenue source for us, brings good traffic to the area. Because if you think about it, EV charging stations like a gas station stuff, right? So everybody comes in and they park the car for half an hour, right? And so that'll be a boon for a lot of the local shops that are located right next to us. Another thing, so 5G municipal broadband. There's a big push within the state, and the federal funds exist for us to start putting up, to invest in 5G infrastructure here. And the great thing is that because we have all the high vantage points in the center of town, there are multiple areas that are of interest to be able to put up 5G infrastructure. So you'll probably recall the congresswoman was talking about this a lot in her talk. This is the part she's excited about. They had issues before. The tobacco company was resistant to letting them put that stuff up, but we're like, yeah, bring it on. And here's the cool thing. Verizon and T-Mobile, when they go in and put in that 5G infrastructure, they pay for the infrastructure, which means that they're also putting in, they would be paying to trench additional fiber, as well as they would be covering some of the costs to develop out some of the fiber to some of the data center facilities that are going to be required. They're in there if you look closely. I'll give you a couple of them. But It's cool. So this is that's Corin, that's me, our congresswoman, the mayor, our state senator representative, other county officials are there, as well as a lot of the employees who since joined us. What you don't see is that there was a large crowd of people who couldn't fit on the steps that were just watching, right? People in the community. And one of the great privileges of being able to work here, obviously we're trying to build a business, but it's been really awesome to be able to work with the people in the community. Stu, I mean, you were there, I'm sure you probably saw it. There are a lot. This is one of the biggest new opportunities this town has seen in a very, very long time. Right? They've gotten used to 20 or 30 years of bad news. Right? Downsizing the company, layoffs, etc. And then here we are coming in. I don't want to say that we're saving the town. I think that's the wrong message to send. But we've been able to work with the community to help them. We've been able to work with the community to become contributors in helping them sort of rebuild the future. I love this. This is a family from the town who came in, and I mentioned that we have a lot of toys, so the kids love visiting the factory. We always have toys to give out. So. We've also been doing other things around town. So the local fire department on 9/11, we hosted them at the facility for a memorial stair climb. I forget how many steps it was. It was like 2,350 steps that the firefighters on 9/11 had to climb to get to the top of the World Trade Centers. Right. So we hosted a sort of a charity event with the firefighters on that facility. Like I mentioned too, we have a lot of toys. It kind of makes it fun. All right, so let's talk about what we're doing Filecoin related over at Lucky Strike. To start with, as I mentioned, we have this initial Filecoin partnership with Picnic, with them it's fairly modest to start. It's 2.5 PIBs on a rack, 2.5 PIB rack with Picnic, using data from the Shoah Foundation. I think OSU Medical School is going to be adding data to that, as well as a number of other partners that we've been working, that we had collaborated with Picnic on, so bring that data in.
Where's that located, Tuan?
This one, unfortunately, so it's not located at the factory yet.
No, I don't. Which Picnic data center?
I believe it's in Las Vegas.
Yeah, right here.
It's right here.
Yeah.
It's actually right here.
Yeah, so real quick, I'll just make a plug for what we do, and it's something that you all can take advantage of is if you're not quite ready to run your node yourself, we can outsource, take on some responsibility of running the node for you in various outsourced means, and that's exactly, you're hearing the story here, where ultimately they're going to run the Filecoin in their own facility, they're not ready yet. So we've stepped up and we're managing this node for them in the interim, basically.
Yep. Yeah, no, I mean and honestly, one of the larger plans that we have, once our facility is ready to go, is our hope is, well, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but we would like to become a facility for other service providers to be able to move in there. Whether it's going through ESPA, coming to us directly, working through partners who, hey, you got your data you've got a copy of data geographically located, in Las Vegas, but you could also have another site out in Texas, another site out in North Carolina. You can add additional copies on there, and it's our broader plan is to be able to develop these partnerships so we can help service providers fluidly get these. Get additional storage deals set up and running. So the main project, though, is this initial 15 megawatt data center facility. I'll show you where we're planning to put that. We're completely, I meant to say completing. So we're completing a lot of the initial engineering and business due diligence on it. Also working on working on identifying investors to help finance that facility. I'll go into this a little bit later, but I think there's a strong potential for that location to be a potentially a mining as a service focused facility, where we can make it very turnkey and easy for service providers to be able to come in and just bring the data in and start mining there. Right? Without you having to go out to other data centers and figure out like, okay, well, like, quote me out for how much it's going to cost per rack. We'd like to make that sort of a turnkey thing where you say like, okay, I need this amount of data stored, and within our data center we'll be able to accommodate you on that. And we have a lot of cost benefits too, not just because, well, we own the facility. We own the facility, and we can build. We own the facility, so we don't necessarily have to make money off of charging you essentially rent on space. But we can find other ways to really package it all together. The mining as a service, the facility space, the management, all in one package. And then on top of that, what we have been talking to, what's really piqued the interest of the government officials, or the elected officials that we've been working with, has been they love the idea that a lot of the data that we're trying to bring in is from Filecoin service providers who are storing data for research and educational institutions. The great thing about that is that allows us to qualify for certain tax benefits, right, and also support from the government. And already, we've been working with them on historical tax credits because the building is historic, right? So being able to maintain that facility is beneficial. Broadband grants, because we need to do upgrades on the local fiber, so we can get some of that subsidized. Green energy grants, because we've been pushing really hard on trying to build a green data center facility, and also Filecoin Foundation has been supportive in trying to help us get grants to support that as well. And the government likes to hear that type of stuff. And then from an investor standpoint, because we've gone into this deindustrialized town and are trying to build it up, working with our federal congresswoman's office, we've been engaging with them on seeking classification as an economic opportunity zone, which for any accountants here are probably aware that there's a tax break for real estate investors investing in facilities that are within these specified zones for economic opportunity, which Reidsville would definitely classify as. For the initial data center site that we're looking at, Building 12 is what we're focused on. There are 26 buildings around the facility. Put it in perspective. Yeah, just so.
Do you have a charger here? We're about to lose the.
Oh, yes.
I'll plug it in.
Oh yeah, it's.
Tech supported.
Okay.
Perfect, thanks.
Building 12, it's a little hard to see it on here. It's that thing over there. Right. That's a large enough facility for like 15 megawatts. This is the floor plan for that. Just within that building, actually not even just within that building, but just within the extension of that building, which is where the focus is. Across 4 floors, it gives us about, across 4 floors, it gives us about 50,000 square feet of usable space for a data center, which is sufficient facility space if you include other support equipment that needs to go with that, for about 1,500 racks. This is a lot. Which, yeah, and at full load, that would consume about 15 megawatts, right? Which is already like half of the power of the facility. And see, like just in the extension of that building, right? Here's pictures of what it looks like right now, right? We've cleared out. We recently were able to clear out a lot of the equipment. This is the one of the extension areas. It's all concrete and steel. We're looking at being able to put up steel walls to cordon off the area where the data center facility is to secure it. And then we have contractors already going in to sort of clean it up and upgrade the electrical there. Right. So that's our plan for the data center. There's a larger strategy, though, in terms of the data center. So working with our data center consultant, there's something really interesting about the location that we're in around the research triangle. That, anybody who, I'll say one of the great things about getting involved in trying to build a data center is learning about all of the economics and business considerations of all the dirty little details related to the internet that you like take for granted. Right? And this is kind of, I've spent my entire career in Silicon Valley. Most of the people I work with, even engineers, have no idea how anything works below AWS. Right. Well, if they're younger, they're like, oh, I just use AWS for everything. Right. If they're a little bit older and they remember the days of having to go into your own colo and set things up, like even those people like are unfamiliar with everything below, working with your data center. Right. What goes into that? Well, there are a lot of considerations. Main one is usually access to power infrastructure. What's your physical proximity to certain major network hubs around the United States, right? Certain fiber trunks, things like that. And for a number of reasons, for a number of really interesting reasons, which Stu, I'm sure you're familiar with, I think it's something like 70 or like 70% of the internet infrastructure in the United States is just here, right? Up in Ashburn, Virginia. Right. So what's interesting now is that that's capped out. Not because they can't put more fiber there or there's not enough space, it's because the power infrastructure there is simply insufficient to support any more major data centers there. So we're now starting to see a diversification away from those areas. There was like Amazon already helped to turn Portland, Oregon into a big sort of data center facility site. But along the eastern seaboard, there are two areas you could go. You could go north, which doesn't make sense because electricity just gets more expensive. Right? New York City does have data centers there, but they are almost entirely focused just on being an interconnect. Right? Only transmitting data, not actually putting infrastructure there. So the best place is to go south. Right? And so the movement away southward has been one of the reasons why the research triangle has been getting so much a new build out. Atlanta has been a huge benefit. Are you out in Atlanta?
Yeah, I've built in Atlanta. My question is, I've constructed tier 3s and stuff in the past, but I think another benefit, and correct me if I'm wrong, is fault tolerance.
Yeah.
Because if you go too far south, then you run into that problem.
Fault tolerance in what regard?
In terms of natural disasters and
hurricanes.
Hurricanes,
yeah. So
that's a thing too. Do you have that? Any of those?
We have started to look at. This actually has been a consideration because what we've discovered too is that as we're reaching out to or starting to communicate with investors about data center facilities, they have maps about how frequently does a hurricane come through here. Right. And so what's interesting is we are in an area called the Piedmont Triad area. Piedmont because it is at a high. It's literally if you're familiar with the geography, you have a tidewater area here, which if a hurricane comes through, big problem. But once you get past Durham, there's this Piedmont. It's basically high elevation, flat. It's like solid rock. Right? So very, very low risk for earthquakes. When Hurricane Ian came through, we were actually directly on the path of it and barely felt a thing. Because the people who were getting the brunt of it were down here, and then we were right up here. Every data center person who's gone to us, this is a really interesting area to build because you're close to Ashburn, and a lot of the fiber trunks are going through here, right? We are close to Atlanta, and increasingly there's been a big push. Google has actually been pioneering a lot of this, where they're realizing that they can save quite a bit of money by building in areas that are not in major metropolitan zones, right, but are close enough where the fiber latency is very low, right, but more importantly, have access to a lot of cheap power, right? And so it's sort of like a mid-tier zone. So that's why we want to be able to build out here, and that's what we're starting to sell to people. Sorry, that was a little bit of a sidebar in the data center world, but that's been a big part of what's made the investment here so interesting for us. Additionally, we are already starting to do expansions on solar. Filecoin Green actually is working with us on this one. So 45 kilowatt facility that we're building on the top of, I said building 16 before, actually I think it's building 9. And then we're also starting to do some research diligence on a prospective site out here, or what used to be the parking lot, to turn that into a 1 megawatt solar and electric vehicle. And the business case, which so far is looking very, very strong. And we're now approaching that period where we're starting to look at investors. So if you're an investor, particularly investors with experience in real estate, infrastructure, data centers, I gave the talk on VC, not VCs, because this is not really a VC type business, but people invest in REITs, data center infrastructure, have an interest in Web3 or crypto in particular. Like those are kind of the people we're targeting for investment there. Second thing is a big part of the business plan that we're putting together is being built around being able to cater to service providers. We did create our own service provider called Lucky Storage, where, as you saw, the facility can support, like even in that one building, 1,500 racks. For anybody who knows how hard it is to fill one rack, I think you can see that it is just not, it's not scalable for one service provider to do, to fill all 1,500. But being able to provide those services to lots of service providers, we think it could be a very interesting facility to build up. And also, not even just for Filecoin, we're interested in really all Web3 projects that require these sorts of facilities. And then finally, advisors, consultants, and partners. We are just at the beginning of things. Once we're rocking and rolling, and we're going to need engineers, we're going to need consultants, we're going to need vendors that we can partner with. Blocks, which was actually a previous ESPA participant, they've actually been a key partner for us in actually doing a lot of diligence here. So they've been, like that building 12, they've already been like putting together all the engineering plans and quotes on that, and looking at our chillers and boilers, etc., for building out that infrastructure. But we're going to need more partners like that. So that's my story. Questions?